Welcome at my session at Scottish Summit 2021. My session will be about driving a data culture in your organization. Once again, welcome, and I would love to tell you a little bit more about me in a second. First of all, let's thank our sponsors for hosting today's session and for making it possible for us to have this amazing opportunity to have this online community event. As I already said, thank our sponsors first and reach out to them if you have any question about their offers to your organization and what they can mean for you. A brief introduction to myself. My name is Marc and I'm working as a data and AI consultant at McCall in the Netherlands, a Dutch Microsoft partner. Other than that, I'm presenting at a lot of user groups in the Netherlands and I'm co-host of the Dutch Power BI Days in the Netherlands. I'm regularly blogging about everything related to Power BI and everything related to Microsoft Data Platform with a specialization and a link to Power BI. To tell you a little bit more on where I'm from, I'm living in a really small village close to the city Gouda, that you probably know as Gouda from the cheese. I'm living here since I was born, and 2 years ago I was traveling a lot to different countries to do public speaking. Today with Scottish Summit reminds me of my last travel that I did last year in 2020, which was my last public outing in a different country before everything started to be virtually. Great reminders of a great event. So let's have a look at what I can tell you today about driving a data culture in your organization. A data culture. So what are the first things that you can think about? First of all, it all starts with a data-driven ambition and having a data-driven ambition in your company. It all starts with data. Data is the key asset that we need in order to drive a data-driven ambition. All this is what we aim to transform into insights and finally bring these insights to action. And with these actions, we can make sure that this loop starts all over again and these actions will generate new data again. This is the key concept behind having a data-driven ambition in your organization. In today's session, I hope to learn you a little bit more about the challenges that we face today while driving a data-driven ambition. What exactly is a data culture? As a third topic, we will look at the center of excellence as a central driver behind the data culture. And fourth, but maybe the most effective one to take action after this session, is tools and services that you can use as offerings to help driving your data-driven ambition. Let's start with the challenges that we face today. Start with what is blocking us today in our data-driven ambitions. Let's first start with looking at Power BI. As I told you in my introduction, Power BI is my main focus as working as a data and AI consultant. I'm doing this for various clients and various companies in the Netherlands, but also international companies. This gives me the opportunity to look at different perspectives of Power BI and also look at the positioning of Power BI inside an organization. First of all, we talk about the first wave of technical BI, which is typically BI that is pushed from a technical perspective from a technical department to an end user. We look at the second wave of BI, we're more talking about analysts that are pushing the insights and delivering the insights to end users. Third wave of BI is what we recognize as end user BI. And end user BI means everyone in your organization should be capable of working with data and transforming this data into insights and hopefully also action by leveraging the tools that are available for them, such as Power BI. I strongly believe that Power BI is one of the main drivers that enables people to have this data-driven ambition and transform their data into action. As everyone engages with software, or in specifically Power BI, or maybe Excel, depending on your organization and what tools you have available, it also brings our first challenge. And our first challenge is what we can see as you need to have the right tool, but also the right capabilities in your organization to do so. and you need to have a license. So everyone in your organization might need to have a Power BI license in order to collaborate, share their work, and collaborate directly with our colleagues to drive this ambition. Having a license is one thing, but of course, if you know Power BI a little bit, you can do the very same thing without a license by publishing content in your personal workspace, your My Workspace. But this will also bring the challenge that you cannot really collaborate with your colleague. So licensing is a key aspect that can block you in your organization from your data-driven ambition, but it's also one of the risks that you might face if you're looking at enabling it for everyone. As Oprah is showing here on the screen, you can give everyone a license, but if people are not capable of doing the right thing or not following your organization best practices, your organization standards, this can lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of mess in your organization around this data-driven ambition. There are organizations that are requiring you to take an exam or maybe even having a certificate before you're getting a license. Depending on your organization size and depending on your organization structure and type, this might be a good approach. As a typical consultant, I would say it depends. There are always pros and cons for each of these scenarios, but I would say it is definitely something to consider. Licensing is one thing, but let's also look on what different delivery approaches we can look at to bring data in whatever form to our end users. Well, we have three typical delivery approaches that we see inside organizations. First of all, bottom-up. So bottom-up is typically where end users start creating insights based on data that they have available at their hand and pushing this up to their managers and up-level managers to inspire them with insights in what work they did, what they achieved in doing their work, and insights like really operational insights. All the way to the right, we have corporate BI. And here we should think about financial reporting or HR reporting, for example. So typically top down. There's one version of the truth and that's it. No other people in the organization are working with this data other than the ones that are capable of doing it and are authorized to do it, as this is typically confidential data. In the middle, we have the blended approach. And with the blended approach, it will be a mix and match. So maybe combination of some sensitive data with bottom-up approach combined, where people can build their own report on top of a managed data source, for example. But having this approach will lead to an exponential growth, especially if we look at the bottom-up approach from business-led and self-service BI. In this example, I use four different names like Dave, Anne, Lila, and Reza. They will all create new reports and are all coming from different parts of the organization. With this brings a risk that if everyone starts creating stuff, it might become a big mess. Everyone starts doing something, but you are lacking control and you're lacking an overview of who's doing what, who's providing which insights in my organization. So what? Everyone can do their own analysis, but why is this a problem? Well, we're lacking in terms of control, data sensitivity, correctness, and solution health. Are they doing the right thing? Are they correcting the right presenting the right numbers to our users? Are they taking care of sensitive data? As you might know, if you share a Power BI report and there's no row-level security involved, it can happen that you share sensitive data with people that are actually not authorized to see this data. And there are many more ways or many more cases where you should think about before you start sharing this in your organization. So if we know these four things that we're lacking a little bit of control, data sensitivity, correctness, and solution health, how can we prevent this from happening? So what value do they add to our organization? Maybe we should look at driving a little bit more of the top-down approach than only the bottom-up approach. but at the same time we might block people in doing their work in the way they prefer to do it and in order to do it better next time. Because if we allow them to do self-service BI, they can analyze their own data, analyze what they did, and improve for the next time, and improve our business processes. If we look a little bit wider than only the scope of Power BI, we also should look at how can we provide the right data at the right time to the users that are working with this data. We should be considering and should be looking at the architecture behind this. Is the architecture leading or is the goal leading of what we are doing? In other words, is it the perfect architecture or is it a fit for purpose? So if we're building an entire data platform, is it only fitting for that specific purpose where we build that top-down enterprise report? Or can we reuse this content across different parts of the organization, reuse specific dimensions in a sales organization, for example, your customer dimension? So you have one version of the truth where you have one version of your customer table that can be used across the entire organization. So also this is something really interesting to look at and to be considering if you build your data platform. Is it a perfect architecture that can be reused across your organization, or is it more looking at a fit for purpose for that specific design for that specific purpose that you want to analyze? Another big risk that we often see is in COE, Center of Excellence, is controlling and not facilitating. They're mainly monitoring what people are doing inside their tool, monitoring what data they extract, what transformations they do, instead of informing them and facilitating them and informing them with new best practices, with do's and don'ts, and facilitating them with templates in order to do the right thing. As a result of this might lead to functionality that is blocked. One of the biggest examples that I've seen here is organizations that block the creation of workspaces inside Power BI. Personally, I have a very strong opinion about that. If your organization is blocking the creation of workspaces, for you this might lead to the fact that you start publishing all your sensitive data in My Workspace in Power BI. As a result of that, no one can access your data. So if you're enjoying your well-deserved holiday somewhere in the sun on the beach and your report fails to refresh, your colleagues cannot access your report because it's inside your workspace. No one else is able to access that. No one else is able to fix that issue with the data loading. The only option they have is reset the password of your account, which is totally not done if you ask me. So if your organization allows you to create workspaces inside Power BI and collaborate inside these workspaces, there's always a fallback scenario where your administrator, your Power BI administrator, can take over your workspace and give someone else access in case it's needed. Just to make sure that if you're enjoying your well-deserved holiday, that someone else can fix the data loading issues there. As these are all different aspects of this data culture, let's have a look on what exactly is a data culture and what components do we need in order to create this data culture. It all tracks down to three different components. First of all is data. Data is the key asset of your organization today. Data is also seen as the new oil. If you're collecting a lot of data, this can help you to do better in the future. On top of this data, we apply some analytics. And this analytics will give us some insights in what we did in the past, maybe do some predictions, and help us to do better in the future by showing us in a visual way what can be done better, or if we're reaching a target, or if we're crossing some line. And all this is nothing worth without people. We need people to interpret this data. We need people to build this analytics on top of our data. And we need people that are running this process and will do better next time based on these analytics. If we have these three components, data, analytics, and people, that will help us in order to reach a competitive advantage in the future. But let's have a look at all of these three components one by one and what this specific word means in the context of a data culture. First of all, let's look at cloud or at data. Cloud data, on-premises data, or even hybrid data, it doesn't really matter where your data is. Data as asset of your data culture can be anything. It can be logging information from actions that you done in a specific system. It can be your order information from your sales company. It can be even any type of data, basically. It can be even how many emails you received during the day. Any type of data, no matter where it is, can be connected to your data platform, to your Power BI analysis environment in order to drive this data culture. Maybe you need a gateway or you need a specific setup in order to to collect this data in a central platform, but there's always a way to connect it. Our second aspect is analytics. Analytics covers a lot of different things. Let's start with discover. You need an easy way to discover all your data across your organization, typically a data catalog. You need to have a way to find this specific table, to find a specific set of data that you're looking for. You also need an easy way to share these insights. So if you build some analytics and some insights on top of a set of data, you really want to share this with your colleagues to all benefit from it. So nothing should hold you back from sharing these insights with your colleague. Analyze. This is a specific element that needs to be there and analyze tons of data in a few clicks and let it add value. So you need to have the right tools on your hands in order to analyze your data, come with these data to new insights, new analytics, and in order to share that with your colleagues. Find and explore. Find answers and explore data in visuals and Q&A capabilities of Power BI, for example, in order to explore your data. Visualize your data and transform millions of rows into stunning visuals. They're easier to interpret other than just giving you a flat file. And it needs to be available anywhere, on any device, on any platform, wherever you are in the world. Typically, nowadays, it will be in your home office, but wherever you are in the world, you need to be able to reach this data and get to these insights. Looking at people. This is really everyone within your organization. No matter if it is the people working at catering, people working at the reception desk, or people working in finance or in HR. Everyone in your organization collects a lot of data throughout the entire day. And everyone in your organization should be capable of driving this data culture based on his own specific needs. If we combine data, analytics, and people, this can give us a competitive advantage. As I already mentioned a few times, these three components will help you to learn from the past and to do better next time. Let's also have a look at a center of excellence. Center of excellence as a central driver behind your data culture. What's in the name? That's the first thing. Center of excellence, center of expertise, business intelligence competence center, or just competence center. These are all different names that I see quite often for the same thing, actually. So whatever, I don't really care what name you give it. Throughout my entire session, I will use the name Center of Excellence. It's just a name that tells you something about a logical grouping of people with the same, share the same interest and working on the same type of activities throughout the day. I will call this the Center of Excellence from now on. If we look at a Center of Excellence, there are a few things that give you a little bit more context around what this Center of Excellence is. It all starts with being a central position in your organization. Data in the heart of your organization. Data in the heart of your organization, as this will be your main driver in order to do better next time. In order to Make sure that you're not only valuable today to your customers, but will remain being valuable in the future. A data-driven organization taking decisions based on data, taking decisions based on real analysis and not just on your gut feeling. A data-driven organization with data in the heart of your organization will help you to improve the results and grow margin over time. It will help you to analyze what you did in the past. It will help you to do some continuous analysis and improve your market value. As I mentioned, to still be valuable in next year, but also the year after and in 5 years from now, and in having an vision and ambition. Data will also help you to create pre-packaged artifacts to click and start new initiatives. It will help you to quickly explore if some new opportunity might be valuable for you to invest. Data at your fingertips, being able to build new solutions. If you have the right data available, it will help you to analyze if this specific opportunity is worth investing, but also if your customers are interested in it. So some real marketing intelligence. And empower individuals to use with data in their day-to-day work. As I mentioned, people is a really valuable asset in your organization and part of your data culture. Everyone in your organization should be able to work with it. And finally, data as ideation and innovation driver in your organization. So as I already said a few times, it is really in the heart of your organization data. So in just a random order, let's have a look on what we need in order to have this data available and in order to make it valuable for us. First of all, we need to have an overview. We need to have an overview of our organization, which people are working with our data, who are working with our data, and what are they actually doing. I mentioned in the beginning, a center of excellence is often controlling and not facilitating. And I just mentioned you should monitor or having an overview of what people are doing in order to facilitate them, not in order to control them. So if you notice that someone is not following best practices, make sure that you provide it to them. That also brings me to my second item. Having best practices and templates available in order to kickstart new experiences with data for ideation and innovation purposes in your organization. Also having expertise and knowledge in your organization. Having people that are driving this data culture and sharing it with passion in your organization. Those are also the people that you can line up for providing training and guidance across the organization to make sure that people are following them and see them as thought leaders in your organization. Also having a decent or a governance setup. And governance in order to make sure that people are doing the right thing and not in order to block them from doing the right thing. Think about the example that I just used of blocking workspace creation in Power BI. Providing them with the right tools like Power BI Desktop, but maybe also third-party applications like Text Studio, Tabular Editor, ALM Toolkit, or what else you need. SQL Server Management Studio, SQL Server Profiler, in order to do their work properly and in a correct way. And finally, also support. Support to make sure that if they got stuck somewhere, that there's someone available that they can speak to and help them and guide them in the right direction, in line with the governance, best practices, templates, and all that I just mentioned. Next, there are a few roles that you need to cover in your organization. Looking at the different roles that you need, there are a few very important in order to drive this data culture. This requires some specific skills and responsibilities. Let's have a look at all the different roles that we need. First of all, we need to have a corporate sponsor. Just the person that brings the money to the table. The person that can pay for a competence center in the startup phase. it is someone that influences a strategy around BI tools, that influences um, the ambition behind having a data culture. And is responsible for doing a tool assessment and for having the right architecture. This corporate sponsor is the one that's making the decisions in the end. If you look at Power BI in specific, we also need some Power BI champions. Not only one, but multiple. Especially in a larger organization, you need various subject matter experts, people that know what they're talking about. People that can be the champion in your organization, that can lead by example. The Power BI champion is a strategically deployed Power BI across organizations or teams. So it can be a key player in different teams across the entire organization in order to make sure that all these different teams are following best practices and doing the right thing. Of course, we also need a security officer. If you're working with sensitive data, it's important to have a security officer that's doing some auditing and data classification, looking at the data and usage policies. Who in our organization is allowed to use this very specific sensitive information, or maybe are they only allowed to use it on a higher granularity? For example, an aggregate. We also need a data steward. The data steward is responsible for decent data modeling, enhancing data quality, creating and maintaining a data catalog and a data dictionary. All these new measures that are built inside a Power BI solution, for example, need to be documented somewhere. Need to be following a strict and defined definition that is shared across your organization. That if you count the number of customers, for example, that you can have a definition, we only count customers that bought something at our company in the past year. So think about a clear definition for every metric that you want to report on, for every performance indicator. Of course, a data architect is also needed with technical knowledge of data sources and how to connect them to the right systems and to your data platform. His responsibility will be matching business requirements to technical capabilities and architectures. Remember that I mentioned an architecture could be either fit for purpose or just being a decent platform that can be reused across our different organizations. Of course, we have a wider scope of BI developers. BI developers with whatever tool they're using to fully understand the Power BI capabilities, building solutions, make sources available for self-service, and develop corporate reports, typically for top-down scenarios. And we have an administrator that is responsible for authentication and IT service management, that's responsible for implementing, together with all these previous rules, to implement the right governance. Is responsible for license assignment, monitoring setup, and gateway setup in your organization to connect the sources to the platform. And last but not least, support in order to fully understand Power BI capabilities and communicate skills, and support users in the self-service scenarios and provide them with templates if needed. All this is also what needs a decent governance model. Governance model in terms of depending on what you report on, your governance might be more strict. As you can see on the very peak of this pyramid, you might have really tight controls if you're reporting on top of the enterprise data warehouse. You might need to follow some best practices like an DTAP approach with development, test and acceptance and production environments and permanent monitoring on top of your solution. Well, all the way to the bottom, on the other hand, we have the personal reporting. It's typically meant for your own purpose. No one is controlling what you're doing. No one is looking after your specific query and if that query returns a valid answer or not. So on the bottom we have less controls. If we go up in project reporting, departmental reporting, or business unit reporting, the controls will get tight. Remember that I just said exponential growth can lead to chaos in your organization. If everyone starts reporting, this might lead to a lot of solutions all around, but you have no clue who's doing what. So we need to create order indicators. we're going to separate people from content. So we know Dave and Lila and Reza are creating content in each of their departments. But we want to separate them. We want to find these Power BI champions and group them together, no matter which department they are. We need to set up knowledge sharing sessions. So even if they're from different departments, we set up knowledge sharing sessions where they can talk to each other about best practices. And we separate it from content, as all the content they created is what we can actively monitor and have an overview with a Power BI monitoring solution, for example. A Power BI monitoring solution that tells you something about content availability. So what content is out there in the platform and what is often used. So it will also show you something like orphan data sets. What data sets are out there and not connected to any report anymore. So potentially can be deleted or are failing for the past month to refresh. So, or either someone need to have a look at it, or maybe we need to delete it. Look at performance. Are your solutions performing well? Especially if you're working with Power BI premium capacities. Performance is a really important aspect. Lineage. What sources are connected? Are your users connecting to local Excel files or connecting to that enterprise data warehouse with a little bit more tight controls? And also environmental health. I already mentioned, for example, orphan data sets, but also the performance of your premium capacities, if your gateways are doing well or breaking pretty often. All this is part of your environmental health. I mentioned these delivery approaches, bottom-up, blended, and top-down. These delivery approaches also relate to different scenarios in your organization. So a typical business-led or self-service BI, which is bottom-up, can have any type of data source. The business supports all the elements of the solution. They are fully owner of this solution, and they are also governing their own solution. The usage of their scope are covering all aspects: data preparation, modeling, reporting, and dashboarding. If we look all the way to the right, we had a top-down approach. Data sources are published by IT, so they are only reporting on enterprise data warehouses and decent data sources. Ownership is fully supported by IT. No one else is owning this solution. It's governed by IT. And for end users, for business, their only scope is using the content that's provided to them. In the middle, we have the blended approach. We have governed data sources, typically enterprise data warehouse, and ownership is with IT for the data sources, but the reports are owned by the business. IT governs the data sources and business governs the reports. And the usage of scope is creation of custom reports and dashboards is the use of scope for the business. They can create new report on top of a managed data source. What I typically translate is into a 100% business-driven scenario on the left, 100% IT-driven on the right, and in the middle of 50-50. Having that said, let's have a look at what tools and services we can use out there in order to drive this data-driven ambition. There are tons of good tools and services out there to help you. First of all is a data catalog. And a data catalog is something that can help you to get this overview of all the sources that you have in your organization. From your CRM system, ERP system, to whatever you need. This data catalog is typically collecting metadata. So not the data itself, but only what tables are in there, what columns are in there, what else you might know about this. This can also help you to create a kickstart effect of each Power BI solution that you will build in the future. As of October 2019, Power BI provides PBIDS files. This is a typical file that only includes a connection to your data source. Not a data model, nothing like that. A PBIDS file can be extracted, for example, from a data source or from a data catalog and kickstart a new solution while you're not bothering your end user with setting up this connection to the specific source, copy pasting the connection string, entering the schema name or all that. This is something that you will see implemented in Azure today. If you connect to or if you go to the Azure portal and go to a SQL database, for example, there is an option to download a connection file to Power BI. And this will give you a PBIDS file. Master data management. It's also one of the key components and tools that you can use in order to drive this data culture. Think about pre-built data flows to be leveraged by end users. Think about that custom or that central dimension that's for your customers that you want to use in different solutions. So build a central repository of pre-built data flows that they can use. But also think about access to dimensional data in a common data model, in a common data service, or Dataverse as it's called nowadays. Easy access to data lakes and data warehouses. The example that I used earlier was about blocking workspaces, but the same applies for having access to a data warehouse. Of course, we should take into account that we have security, that we have governance around it, but don't block people to do it, because they will always find a way around it. If you're not giving them access, they might just export data from whatever system themselves and connect a bunch of Excel files together. But also, something else that you can look at is pre-built data models to be leveraged by end users, which typically fits in the 50-50 blended approach, where the data models are governed and managed by IT, and end users can build new reports on top of it. Things that will help you here are the data sets hub in the Power BI service. More about that in a second. Another thing to look at is classification. Reuse of content in terms of certified and promoted data sets value what people did. If people build a decent solution that's following all your best practices and all your standards, you can promote their data set or their data flow. If it is promoted, you can also level it up. For example, if it is an IT managed solution, you can give it another stamp, an endorsement for certified. This is what we built from IT. This is the only version of the truth. Same applies for classified content for reports. And another item that you can do, or a functionality that you can use, is featured content. Featured content allows Power BI administrators to push content forward as a new report that they might be interested in, or things like that. But don't block all the freedom. You still need to give people freedom for a typical end user freedom in playgrounds, sandboxes, and also allow them to leverage AI functionalities, for example, to play around with new functionality in order to inspire them with new things that they can do in order to improve their own work next time. Discoverability is another key component to look at. I already mentioned the data catalog. That will definitely help you. The data catalog, think about the recent announcement of Azure Purview, which is the new sort of version of the data catalog and data management in Azure. The Power BI Service Datasets Hub, as you see on the right hand bottom. And also the integration of the Power BI Service inside Teams. A very powerful feature nowadays that you can directly get to your inside Teams while you're on a conference call. All this covers Microsoft solution, but also have a look at the third-party options like Colibra and Quero PowerMe that help you to scan and complete data platforms that are maybe a combination of different parties. If you have an SAP HANA system combined with Power BI or any other sort of setup. This all also comes down to lineage. Lineage in order to track where the data comes from. So if you build a decent report, what data source is behind it? And is this a trustworthy data source? What data flows are behind it? Is this following our best practices? Is this using our central shared dimension? And how reliable is the data source? Not to forget about impact analysis. Typically for your developers, if they are pushing a new version of a report or a new version of that specific data set, with impact analysis, they can see what solutions might be affected if they remove a column or rename a column. This is already covered in the Power BI servers today. If you go to your workspace, you can easily navigate to the lineage view that will also give you the impact analysis sheet. If you publish new content from Power BI Desktop, you will also be prompted if you're sure that you want to override it. and if you want to see the impact of content that you're overriding. Not to forget about having a decent development, test, acceptance, and production approach. Another thing to look at is training. Classroom training or online training. From a central perspective, you cannot train thousands of people. So think about decentralization. Train your key users, specific departments or chapter leads that are sharing your vision and your expertise across the organization with others. But also value their effort. Give them like a certification of completion if they did a training. Value them for their effort by saying, okay, now we value you in the organization as an analyst or as a champion. Share actively best practices like a Power BI cheat sheet to set up a central page on SharePoint or wherever you put it to share best practices, but also templates. Your corporate identity applied in a template, but also specific settings for visuals. Not to forget about community building. Set up a Teams channel where they can actively engage. Or also set up a Yammer group or Facebook Workplace, whatever is the standard in your organization, or maybe even consider to do all of them, just to make sure that it's easy to find. People will actively collaborate in these kind of different community setups just to get our question answered, just to share their new experiences or being really enthusiastic about that new feature that came out in the last release. All this will not fill every gap that you have, but also think about setting up Q&A hours as a last thing. Fill the knowledge gap by just having open Q&A hours where people can jump in and out, ask whatever question they have, and set up expert panels, for example, driven by the Center of Excellence, where they can ask any question they have, or you set up a specific call around a specific topic once a month. That brings me to the recap of this session. Personally, I strongly believe that data should be in the heart of your organization, and it is for a lot of organizations today. In the heart of the organization will help you to have the right information at the right time in order to make sure that you're still valuable in the future. Make sure that the architecture behind your data platform is fit for purpose and not because it looks fancy or it is the new functionality that Microsoft released. Make sure that every employee in your organization is able to work with the data, following best practices, governance, and all that you set up. Just to make sure that you're not blocking someone from doing the right thing and make sure that they can improve their work. A Center of Excellence can be a central driver behind the data culture and make sure that the Center of Excellence is facilitating the business and not controlling. By combining the three aspects that I mentioned in the beginning of the session, data, whatever type of data it is, analytics, whatever platform it is, and people by providing them and supporting them, facilitating them to do the right thing. This can lead to a competitive advantage, which makes sure that you're not only delivering your promise to your customers today, but will still be valuable next year, the year after, and in the long-term future. With this, thank you for your attention. Feel free to reach out to me on any of the channels that are listed below, on my email, Twitter, LinkedIn, or directly to my website. And I'm happy to have a chat with you about everything that data culture means, or drop your questions in the chat right now. Thank you for taking part in this community session, and thank you for participating. Have a great day, and I hope to see you soon.